It's truly a great pleasure to me. I'll share my top 5 learnings from the book. Start with why. Really inspiring because there were some very strong takeaways for me, which I still implement in my life and still keep learning how to implement those learnings. So one of the first ones is people don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. And with that, I start the first learning, which is the golden circle of why, how, and what. So, our sense of purpose, whether personally, professionally, is the key to success. And if we start with why, followed by how, and then what, these are the steps which help you achieve both personal satisfaction as a leader, and it helps you grow and your organization grow as well. And there are two ways of doing things, right? One is when you start with what, followed by how, and then go to why. But if you start with why, where you go with the cause, you do what do you believe, you start with that, then you go to specific actions and realize what your why is, and then you go to what you do. That's the complete change in the way we think and do. And most of the organizations, right? And it's a simple example where a lot of organizations know what they do, right? These are, I mean, what is basically the products, the services, the features that we talk about, right? For any of the things, very, a lot of people know what they do. Very few people or organizations know how to do it, right? Uh, uh, these are things that make them special or set them apart from their competition. But very few organizations, very few people actually know why they do what they do. Why is not about making money. Like a lot of organizations say that my vision is to make profit. That's not what your why could be. It's just what, right? So why is the purpose, the cause, the behavior, and and this is not just, I would say, an opinion. This is actually biology. And if you go into detail of how our brain is structured, so at the center there is the reptilian brain, which is the instinctual brain, where suddenly you get, say, a hot touch on your skin, you'll react, right? The inner layer then has the limbic brain, which is basically the emotional or the feeling brain. That's where our gut feeling comes in. A lot of times we say that on the face when there's an interaction happening, a lot of times people, what they talk about versus what they are actually thinking in their head, we are able to interpret whether is there a conflict or not in what they are saying. So the emotional or the feeling brain is able to understand that, but it's the neocortex, which is the external part of the brain, which gives you the rational thinking, or the rational way of interpreting what you're thinking. So if you start with why, you are talking to the feeling part of the brain, the emotional part of the brain, and with and that is where the circle, the golden circle, has an impact. So, and to give you an example of how it gets implemented, and Apple is a great example, and it's been spoken in the book as well, that what companies do are external factors, but why they do is something deeper. And Apple's why is to challenge the status quo and to empower individuals. And that is why the clarity of why that gives them the remarkable ability to innovate, often competing against companies which are more qualified than them, outside their core business. So if you see, like, there are so many mobile phones, right? And despite of having limited features, right, versus, say, a 20,000 phone of Xiaomi, and versus Apple, which is like almost 1 lakh rupees, people still paid because consumers who have strong why, understand the why of Apple, want to showcase that, the emotional side of it. That's why a lot of people still buy Apple, right? So it's only because Apple's why is so clear that those who believe what they believe are drawn to them. So that's the first and most important one. The second one, which has had a lot of impact in my thought process as well, is your marketing inspirational or manipulative? So manipulative marketing is all about giving discounts, doing short-term stuff, versus inspirational marketing is more long-term. And one is from a marketing standpoint, one is from an organization standpoint. The other part is from a personal standpoint, when you're managing a team, when you're dealing with individuals, right? When you're creating followers, if you manipulate consistently or manipulate for a certain time, you will slowly and steadily lose out. But if you can provide inspiration, if you can create that inspirational, so even for example in my team, I always believed in rather than doing it, getting the work done through fear, which could be manipulative, how do you create inspiration for them? How do you create the will and skill to develop? That's what, from a long-term perspective, has a lot of impact. So I think that's one very important aspect that I understood from the book about why it's important to be inspirational rather than manipulative. The third thing which I started with is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. We believe in challenging the status quo and thinking differently. So we design our products to be beautiful and simple to use. This is Apple, right? So Apple leaves their audience in inspiration, appealing to people who also feel they challenge the status quo. So inspirational marketing and a clear sense of why is what engenders brand loyalty, right? The fourth one is your decisions should be consistent with your why, right? And companies and employees will be more successful if they align their why and make sure they both believe in the same things, right? If companies choose partnerships or leaders who do not support the company's why, this usually causes problems and loss of trust from customers and employees. So you have to be consistent in what you do and why you do. And that why has to be central to whatever you do consistently over a period of time. And that is where you will become effective and successful. The last learning, there are many of them, but I think the top five, among the top five, this was which actually has a lot of impact. It's how a lot of startups actually work, and this is basically a bell curve which showcases that you don't need to target everyone in the market, right? So there are certain behaviors, there are certain cohorts of consumers who can be bifurcated into innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. So, and to give you specifically what innovators mean, so innovators are people who want to be the first to try the innovation. They are venturesome, interested in new ideas, and very willing to take risks. And they are often, so there would be people who would be standing in the queue when an iPhone 10, iPhone 11 comes in, right? So these are people who want to try out new things. So these are the innovators, and they are like roughly around 2.5%, and it could vary a bit, but then these are very few people, but these are the first ones that we should target if we want to create a community. The second is early adopters. These are people who represent opinion leaders. They enjoy leadership roles, embrace change opportunities, and they are already aware of the need to change and are comfortable adopting new ideas. So these are people who are on the edge, who first see the innovators, and then once they kind of see that it's something which is interesting, they will also adopt it. The third is the early majority. And these are rarely leaders, but they do adopt new ideas before the average person comes in. So they typically need to see the evidence. I would say I would be part of early majority. I'm not an innovator nor an early adopter, but yeah. And this is the majority. This is one of the big chunk which you will see is almost 34% of people would be there in the early majority. And this is where the tipping point, the tipping point tips as in the book, that this is where a lot of people start coming, understanding or believing in your purpose. That's the early majority. The late majority these are people who are skeptical of change, will only adopt on an innovation after it has been tried by the majority. And then finally there would be laggards, and there will be a lot of laggards as well. But these are few. these are people who are bound by tradition and very conservative. They are very skeptical of change and are hardest group to bring on board. Probably you don't even need them in your marketing or in your life. So it's all about how do you traverse, how do you go through this journey and ensure that how quickly you come towards early majority and late majority, right? And these are the top 5 learnings that I could share with you guys, and definitely read this book. So that's about it. Thank you.